about Christopher Hitchens is he's the most erudite man that I ever met in my whole life. To be the most erudite man that Richard Dawkins ever met, that gives you a distinction that is godlike, I swear. But I have been so fortunate. Ladies and gentlemen, I knew Carl Sagan like an intimate friend, Martin Gardner, all of these people over all these years, Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize winners and such, have mixed with me. They've shaken my hand and we've laughed together. I've been so fortunate in the people that I've met. And I valued each and every one of them. I hate to say it this way, but I've been blessed. They are the salt of the earth. And the only one that I missed meeting was because I was born too late. I wanted to meet Marie Curie. Yeah, but I never got to meet her. She died well before I was born. It's unfortunate timing, I would say.
My name is
Sebastian, and I was just wondering if you are annoyed by the way you briefly went over it, but by the way, I'm sorry, how the media dumbs down teenagers, because I'm personally very, very annoyed when TV channels that claim to be scientific claim something without having any evidence.
Obviously, is it the question in there?
Yes, he was asking about TV channels that feed things to young people that claim to be scientific, but it's pseudoscience.
Oh yes, that's an excellent question. I thank you for that, and we can close on this answer to this question, by the way. The media will react to receiving letters, and letters that are sent to the newspapers objecting to things that they print, that they publish, and television stations will respond. We have had, and the humanists I know all over the world have had great responses from television, radio stations, and newspapers of various kinds and magazines who must respond to their readers. They will react to it. Don't be afraid to sit down at your computer and peck out a letter and say how angry you are at something that has been said in that publication. Don't be afraid to do it. And if you do it and somebody else does it, that will get through to them, and they'll suddenly look around and say, these people don't like what we printed or what we said or what we telecast. So that's the important thing. Act. Get up on your feet and act. Don't sit there and let somebody else do it. I can do it. Oh yes, I travel all over the world saying it in very loud voices. But I need you as allies. Get out there and say your piece. Do it intelligently and do it often. And every time that something occurs like that, you can have the chance of having your word put in there, and maybe you will have an effect too. And ladies and gentlemen, again I want to thank the humanists for inviting me. It's been such a delight to be here. Thank you very much, and I will be signing autographs afterwards.
So, that was the entirety of James Randi's lecture here in Oslo on March 18th. I just wanted to add, especially since the last video was so short, just like 3.5 minutes, I wanted to add a few thoughts of my own, since I had the time. Just correct a couple of things that Randi said that were wrong, or assumed that were wrong, and tell you a little bit about the campaign that his lecture, or lectures, he was also in a couple of other cities here further north, that was a part of. First of all, he said that, because I know he's absolutely right when he talks about how this guy, the supposed healer, who is so famous in this country that it's ridiculous. He talks about how he is, well, ridiculously popular. And of course he's right that it's stupid that we have that guy who even members of parliament, former members of parliament, actually believe it, that he can cure colic and all that shit. It's ridiculous. But that he has sold millions of books is completely wrong. It's it's laughable. This is a nation of less than 5 million people. Nobody sells millions of copies after having published 5 books. That's no. That's not going to happen. I think he sold all his books, for sure, for I think 5 or 6. He sold something like between 200 and 300 copies, I think, altogether, which is still very respectable. The biography of him that was published a few years ago in 2008, it had a first print run of 20,000 copies. That is a lot in this country. So, millions, no. If it had sold millions, then that would have meant that like every single person in the country bought one, and that would have been extremely bad. But we're talking about tens of thousands, not millions. Still, it's bad enough, but it's nowhere near that bad. And another fallacy, at least I feel it's a fallacy, is when Randi was saying that he was disappointed about all of this, about this healer and clairvoyant reaching up into Parliament even, and a princess royal talking to angels. He's disappointed at that because it is disappointing, of course, but his reasoning for that was that he feels that, or he thought that Norway was like a bastion of common sense, that we were, that we were really smart and we wouldn't take things for granted and we wouldn't accept all this woo and blah blah blah. And I don't understand why he thinks that. I don't see what the reasoning would be for him to make that assumption. On the contrary, all research indicates that Norwegians are the most naive and the most gullible nation in Europe. And why wouldn't we be? We were traditionally always a dirt poor nation. Education levels were low. We only had a university for the past couple hundred years. And have been poor up until like the late 1960s. So I can tell you that historically there's absolutely no reason to think that Norwegians would be more skeptical, have more common sense, any of that, than any other nation. And personally, I don't see any reason to think so now. So where that's coming from, I really don't know. If anyone else, foreigners especially, are watching this and have had the same opinion, I would love to hear from you in the comments about what makes you think that, because I see no reason to think it now, and I don't see any reason why anyone should have ever made that assumption. The obvious is true. And obviously, I mean, poor, undereducated, why would we have more common sense than anyone else? I personally don't think that has anything to do with reality at all. It may be because we're low on religion, we're a very atheistic nation, but that doesn't have anything to do with common sense. That has simply to do with money. As a nation gets richer, it gets more religious. I'm sorry, less religious. When I say gets less religious, as if it's poor, that's when religion kicks in, because it promises pie in the sky when you die. For instance, Americans struggle financially. Americans are very religious. You have had a lot of, traditionally, you Americans had a lot of poor communities, you still have, and they're very religious. Whereas in higher levels of your society, people who have traditionally been well off, there's less religion. And we've managed to spread out our wealth that we got from the oil 40 years ago. I'm almost tempted to say, unfortunately. We managed to spread that out throughout the entire society, so that everyone's become wealthy, more or less. Or at least everyone's living in a wealthy society that can afford to take care of them. So of course we're less religious. But that has nothing to do with common sense. That has only to do with money. So that's wrong, and I don't understand where it comes from, this assumption that he made. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was the campaign that Randi's visit was a part of, which is a campaign instituted by the Norwegian Humanist Association, Human-Etisk Forbund, and it's called Ingen liker å bli lurt. I'm going to link to it in the video description. It means nobody likes to be tricked, and it's all about promoting healthy skepticism and so on. And of course I think it's great that they brought Randi to Norway. I had a fun time seeing him, and it was an experience. I really enjoyed it. So I'm happy about that opportunity, but I think that the campaign is kind of wrong-headed. They're going about it the wrong way, because the campaign presents it as the problem that people that people are victimized, you know, the general public are victimized by charlatans and con artists, the people who promote homeopathy, ionized water, healing, astrology, all kinds of woo like that, and that's bad. They shouldn't be doing it, and if only people knew better, then they would be able to trick them. So we should just educate people, and this will kind of sort itself out. But I do agree, of course, that it is a problem that charlatans are allowed to operate freely in our society, and I think it was one of the worst things that has happened so far this century was when the Quackery Act was rescinded in its entirety in 2004. That was absolutely horrible. Basically, it leaves anyone free to sell anything to anyone with no repercussions. If you're selling whatever, you know, if you're selling water to cure cancer, there are no repercussions. It's really, you have to practically kill someone on video, you know, to be able to be even indicted for anything like that. So it's completely ridiculous that we have let our guard down so completely. But, and these people should be punished, I agree, but I don't think that's the problem. I don't think the solution is simply to say, oh, nobody likes to be tricked, so let's help them. I think the problem is not that certain individuals are out to actively trick naive people. I think that people do want to be tricked. I think that that is the actual problem. People do like to be tricked. They want it to happen. They like for it to happen. And the reason for that is that they're stupid idiots. I think it's like H.L. Mencken said, although he was talking about something else, but he said, let's see if I can remember it, he said that many people are unable to write. Speaking from his standpoint as a writer, he made his profession. Made his living by writing, that was his profession. And he said that many people are simply unable to write. And this is because they are congenitally unable to think. Because they simply lack the equipment to do so, just like they are congenitally unable to fly because they lack the equipment to do that. And I think that is so true. People are stupid idiots. And I really don't think that you can change people's minds, that you can give them the tools to think critically, that you can help them understand more so that they will see that they are being tricked. They do like being tricked. It's what they want. Of course, not everybody, and that's proven by the fact that this campaign has received a lot of positive response. But it's proven by the fact that people do go on being tricked. Even people who understand homeopathy still use it. Randi made a good point about the same thing when he told us that, as you will have seen in one of the earlier videos, possibly, that after he had gone on the Tonight Show and exposed psychic surgery as being total bullshit and a hoax, people called in not to ask about that, but to ask where they could get in contact with these so-called psychic healers. And it's just beyond ridiculous. It is beyond ridiculous. But it goes to prove that people do like to be tricked because they're stupid idiots. And I'm not saying this to put myself forward as being some kind of fantastic person who is, you know, above that, who's not a stupid idiot. I think that everyone is a stupid idiot on some level. Like, for instance, I myself am a stupid idiot on some points. I can give an example. On a recent trip to Spain, I bought my 5th MP3 player. Not because I needed it, I didn't, because I have, obviously, 4 MP3 players already, and they pretty much all work the way they should, so I absolutely didn't need it, but I bought it. My MP3 player number 5 in my collection, and I bought it not because I needed it. I bought it because it is shaped like Hello Kitty. So, yeah, I'm a stupid idiot too. But hopefully only in things like this, where it don't really matter. 30 euros on a Hello Kitty MP3 player is completely irrelevant in the larger scheme of things. And when it comes to things that really matter, I personally don't like to be tricked, and I am not tricked. I don't let myself be tricked. But those who do let themselves be tricked, the majority of them, they do like it. They want it. And that's why this kind of thing, I applaud it. It's wonderful. Let's do it. Let's do what we can to help those people who are able to learn to think more critically. Let's help them with that. But we also have to recognize, which I think this campaign does not do, we have to recognize that people, and I think a lot of people, I think possibly the majority, they do like being tricked. And they cannot be persuaded away from this mindset. So we simply have to legislate in a way that doesn't allow them to be exploited. Or at least makes it so that they only hurt themselves and not, for instance, their children by giving them water full of silver atoms so they turn blue, you know, all that shit. It's, the innocent have to be protected, but you cannot protect all the people all the time because they don't want to be protected. They do enjoy being tricked. The stupid idiots. Okay, this is getting really long, but I just want to say one thing, or maybe two. I want to just say a little bit about the Q&A at the end of the lecture, which I gotta say was incredibly embarrassing. The most excruciatingly embarrassing experience I've had for months and months. I was just squirming in my seat the whole time. It was really, really very awkward. And I have to say that I understand why alties sometimes come out against skeptics and say, oh my god, you guys are just a total sect anyway. You just fawn at your skeptical prophets and just believe whatever they say. For most skeptics, I hope that's not true, but for those alties, those few of them who were present at the lecture on the 18th, they must have had all their worst nightmares confirmed in that direction, because seriously, first of all, the first guy who asked the question about the Gansfeld experiments, yeah, he's a believer. He's in paranormal societies and that kind of shit. He's even been a leader of one at one time. But if what he's saying is really so fucked up, then we don't need to boo him. Then we have the arguments to blow him out of the water. And obviously Randy's an old person. Obviously everything was set up so that he didn't hear the question. But what he said, that was extremely embarrassing to it. Basically nobody, almost nobody at least, got an answer that had anything to do with the questions they'd actually asked, and he just blew them off and came off as very arrogant, and yeah, it was embarrassing for everyone involved. So I would just like to say to skeptics listening or watching this, whatever, the alties do believe that we are a sect, a cult, whatever, just as much as they are. So please try to think about that and try to act in a way that will not give food to those assumptions. Personally, one of the rules that I live by in my life, one of the fundamental rules, is that I will never ever applaud the fact, I mean physically applaud the fact, that a celebrity has celebrity friends. Why cheer wildly just because somebody mentions Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens? I have to say, I was embarrassed for the one altie who turned up and asked a question. Yes, because what he said was so dumb. And I think I need to do another video on that, actually. But I was really embarrassed for my fellow skeptics. First, booing the poor guy. I laughed at him a little at first, too, just because it was so crazy of him to turn up and think that he was going to get people to actually listen to that in that setting after being so jazzed up from hearing Randi for more than an hour. But it was also just, it was crazy. I was not expecting that, but I stopped laughing and I did not boo him, and I think it's horrendous that people actually did boo him. I was ashamed of my fellow skeptics sitting there, and when people started cheering just because Randi said that he talked to Richard Dawkins about something and Hitchens, whatever, I was even more embarrassed. Seriously. He's a celebrity, he has celebrity friends. Who gives a fuck? Seriously, what does it matter and who even cares? Yeah, that was embarrassing. And I hope to not witness anything like it again. Probably. A vain hope. But yeah, seriously, it was good fun. Not very original material, but it was fun to watch it. But ended on a low note for me with that awful Q&A sessions. Just, yeah, as a skeptic, you need to think about the face you're presenting to the world, because as a skeptics, you are representing all of us. Skeptics, I mean, we are representing everyone. And don't boo your opponent if you can actually argue him down. And yeah, famous people hang with other famous people. Get over it. It's not a big deal. And of course, don't forget, you too can one day own a Hello Kitty player.